Hello, Internet. I'm Karina, and welcome to Kate Chats. Before we get started today, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're liking our content. Today, we have a very special guest with us. We have Daniel Lippman, who is a reporter with Politico. Daniel, welcome. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
So last time we spoke, it was actually on the Swamp podcast about 4 years ago, and you were just going through your first presidential transition of power as a journalist in Washington, and you've just now gone through your second. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences this time around, and are you seeing the same prevalence of leakers?
Well, this one was much more exciting than last time around. You did not have, supporters of Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama urging them to come into Washington to try to have an insurrection and stop a new president from coming into power. And then you have 400 people get arrested as a result. And so this one was much more chaotic. I'm kind of thankful that we haven't seen much real world effect in terms of US influence getting hurt by that type of transition. But it's kind of led to Republicans feeling chastened for a little bit, but you have lots of members who are still have, they're unapologetic about voting to not certify the election results. And in terms of your leaking question, the Biden administration is much more tight-lipped. They run a much tighter ship than the Trump administration. The Trump White House and various cabinet agencies had many more leakers, and there were many more feuds to write about. And this one it's much more smooth sailing in terms of unauthorized media leaks, kind of few and far between.
So in 2019, you left your role at Politico Playbook to cover the White House in Washington full time. What, how has your day-to-day changed, and how are you liking your new role?
So I had done Playbook for about 5 years when I left it in 2019, and it was the best experience of my professional life because it was just so fun to do, and there's a great Playbook community. And it's kind of different in terms of I have more normal working hours. When you're working on Playbook, you have to get up in mid at like 4 a.m. to write the newsletter. Now there's a much bigger team, but when it started, it was just Mike Allen, and then when I came on board, it was just me and Mike. And so it's now they have 4 co-authors in the morning. I'm really enjoying reading they're doing a great job. But this job is more kind of a standard reporter beat in terms of writing stories and expanding my writing muscles, becoming a better writer and reporter. And so it's been nice to kind of make that transition instead of writing items for a newsletter. I wanted to kind of exercise different muscles as a journalist.
So have you had any personal encounters with President Biden since he's been in office, or Vice President Harris, or even either of their spouses?
With COVID, there's not a huge party circuit where I'm running into them. But I had met all of them before during the Obama administration. And my contact is with their staffs, their comms people, other people who work for them and in the administration. And so I'm looking forward to kind of running into them and seeing them at parties. And I would think they're probably going to invite the press to the annual Christmas party. In the Trump years, we were not allowed most of the time.
Oh, well, that'll be nice to have you guys back, I'm sure. So Russia still seems to be a hot topic surrounding Trump. In February, you wrote about how Trump hid his calls to Putin, and now the Biden White House has access to all of that. So has there been any follow-up there? And do you think it's likely that we'll ever know the full content of those phone calls?
So that's a great question. I should probably ask my sources to see what they have found in them. So I appreciate that. But the problem is that, those calls are still sensitive and classified, and so they have the proper clearances. But we will get to see these calls decades when these presidential records are released. There's a certain time period that they like to hold off on. I forget the exact number of years, but they want to be sure that presidents can have confidence that there is a feeling that their calls are not going to just get published because of various disclosure laws right after they leave office. And so, but it'll be fascinating to see them. I'm sure there was a lot of buddying up and kind of shooting the expletive, if we can use that word, in those calls. And so, but what we don't have is accurate transcripts of their in-person meetings, because they would often tell translators to take a hike.
So what else are you working on these days? What else is on your radar in terms of the Biden White House?
So since it's a buttoned up operation, I look for spots where I can kind of play a role and make some news. And so, there are still, with 1,400 political appointees, not all of them are going to have, sterling records or, be able to work with others. And so some recent stories I've done are about the chiefs of staff of cabinet agencies. And so I had one on the Interior Department chief of staff to Deb Haaland. The White House canceled a party that she was going to have inside, a 50-person party to celebrate Haaland's confirmation, which in the middle of COVID was kind of a no-no. And then she was later removed by the White House and moved to a senior counselor role at the department. And then I did a story recently about the presumptive chief of staff at the U.S. mission to the UN, who was kind of removed from her position because she lost her security clearance. And so if people have tips on that, feel free to send them to me, daniel@politico.com. But it's trying to break news on that personnel beat, and also just kind of the wider culture of Washington, as the town changes because of this administration.
Well, we definitely look forward to seeing more of that from you. We also have a press conference coming up on Wednesday from the president. Do you have any predictions about what he may cover this week?
I think he's going to be talking a lot about the American Families Plan, trying to build that infrastructure that's not actually physical infrastructure, but more childcare and helping senior citizens and all of that type of softer infrastructure that they're driving a message at. But they seem to have be busy at the White House, trying to help India with their coronavirus, surge. Michigan is another problematic state in the U.S. Trying to reassure Americans of the safety of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And so there's still a lot of, they haven't solved the pandemic yet. And I think there's still issues about vaccine hesitancy. How they will address that is also an interesting topic.
Okay, and lastly, one question we always ask all of our guests, and it's kind of an opportunity to shout out some of your fellow journalists, but who do you consider to be the most underrated workers in the American news business?
Underrated. I would kind of take a small pass in terms of not saying underrated, but people I look up to. And most of them are pretty well venerated, but people like Robert Costa at the Washington Post and MSNBC, he's co-writing a book with Bob Woodward, which should be a fascinating book. Ryan Lizza, my colleague at Politico, he's doing a great job at Playbook. And Adam Nagurney at the New York Times, he covered Washington for a long time. Mark Leibovich, David Brooks, those types of those people are some of my journalists I really look up to, along with Peter Baker, who's writing a book with his wife Susan Glasser about the Trump years.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And to our viewers, don't forget to like and subscribe. And we definitely look forward to seeing what's coming up next with Daniel. And we should have some more interesting segments here on K-Chats as well. So keep tuning in. Thank you.